Why you never sit on the wrong bed. Inside a prison cell, nothing is random. Every object has meaning. Every corner has history. Every movement is watched. And sometimes the smallest mistake a person can make is simply sitting down, not just anywhere, on the wrong bed. Inside prison, that small decision can instantly change how every person around you sees you. Because a bed in prison is not just a place to sleep. It is territory. And territory inside a locked room matters more than most people outside can understand. A prison cell is smaller than most people imagine. Concrete walls, a metal door, a thin window covered by steel bars, 2 bunks welded into the wall. Sometimes 3 men, sometimes 4, all living inside a space that barely gives them room to move. There's no real privacy, no quiet, no way to step outside when tension builds. Everything happens inside that room. Eating, sleeping, arguing, waiting. Days blur together. Weeks stretch into months. Months become years. And when human beings are forced into spaces as small for this long, something changes in the way they behave. They begin creating rules. Not official rules. Not rules written by guards. But rules created by the people living inside the cells. Rules that control respect. Control status. Control survival. One of the first rules every inmate eventually learns is simple. You never sit on another man's bed. The first day inside prison is confusing. New inmates arrive carrying almost nothing, usually a plastic bag. Inside the bag are basic supplies. Soap, a toothbrush, 2 shirts, maybe a few letters from home. They walk through long concrete corridors. Every door makes the same heavy sound. Metal sliding, metal slamming. Echoes travel down the hallways. Some inmates stare from their cells. Others barely look up. But everyone notices when someone new arrives. Because every new person changes the environment. Inside prison, strangers are always evaluated first. Quietly, carefully, every movement matters. Eventually, the officer stops at a cell door. The door slides open. The officer gestures inside. Step in. The new inmate walks forward. The cell is already occupied. 2 men are inside. One sits on the top bunk. The other stands near a small metal sink. Both of them look up as the new inmate enters. No one speaks. The officer closes the door. Steel crashes against steel. The sound lingers for a moment, and now the new inmate is inside the cell, alone with 2 strangers. There is a silent ritual that happens during these first few seconds. The new inmate usually stands near the door. He waits. Sometimes he introduces himself. Sometimes one of the other inmates asks questions. How long is your sentence? Where are you from? Where are you in for? But sometimes no one speaks at all. Silence becomes a test. The new inmate shifts his weight, looks around the room. 2 bunks. One of them appears empty. The mattress is flat. No one sitting there. So he walks over, drops his plastic bag, and sits down. For a moment, nothing happens. The room stays quiet. But the atmosphere changes instantly. The man standing by the sink slowly turns his head. Not quickly, slowly, like someone noticing a problem. His eyes move toward the bunk, then toward the man sitting on it. The inmate on the top bunk leans forward slightly, watching. Still no one says anything. But something important has already happened, because the bed the new inmate just sat on is not empty. It belongs to someone. Inside prison cells, beds are claimed early, usually within the first few hours of living there. Some inmates take the top bunk. Others take the bottom. But once the decision is made, it becomes understood territory. No paperwork. No official assignment. Just silent agreement. And everyone respects it. Because if people didn't respect those small territories, violence would become constant. So when someone new walks into a cell and sits on another inmate's bunk, it doesn't look like a simple mistake. It looks like a challenge. The man near the sink finally speaks. His voice is calm. You comfortable? The question hangs in the air. The new inmate nods slightly. Yeah. Another pause. But the question was never really about comfort. It was about territory. The man takes a step closer. That's my bunk. The words are quiet, controlled, not angry, just clear. The new inmate immediately stands up. Didn't know. He steps away from the bed. But the tension hasn't completely disappeared. Because inside prison culture, perception matters more than intention. And from the perspective of the man who owns that bunk, someone just walked into a space and sat down without asking. The man on the top bunk finally speaks. You knew? Yeah. How long you got? 5 years. The man by the sink sits down on the bed again, reclaiming it, reestablishing control. Then he leans forward slightly. In here, everything got a place. He taps the mattress once. And every place got somebody claiming it. The new inmate nods. But the lesson isn't finished. Because prison culture is built on reinforcement. Small corrections are meant to prevent bigger problems later. The man stands up again, steps closer. Next time you walk into a cell, he pauses. You wait. Not advice. A rule. In many cells, the situation ends there. A warning. A correction. The new inmate understands. Everyone moves on. But prison is full of people carrying anger, pride, and stress. Sometimes the person sitting on the wrong bunk doesn't move. Sometimes they argue. Or worse, they laugh. And laughter inside a prison cell can change everything. Because laughter in the wrong moment sounds like mockery. Mockery feels like disrespect. And disrespect inside prison threatens the balance that keeps violence from happening every day. So when someone refuses to move from another inmate's bunk, the situation escalates. Voices become colder. Posture changes. Every person inside the cell understands what may happen next. Because territory must be defended. If it isn't, reputation disappears. And reputation inside prison is everything. Without it, a person becomes vulnerable. To people outside prison walls, this situation might seem insignificant. It's just a bed, a thin mattress on a metal frame. But inside prison, objects gain psychological importance far beyond their physical value. Because prison takes almost everything else away. Freedom disappears. Choice disappears. Control disappears. Inmates cannot decide where they go, when they leave a room, when they eat, when they sleep. Nearly every decision is made by someone else. So the few small spaces that remain become extremely important. A bunk becomes one of those spaces. It is the one place an inmate can claim, where he sleeps, where he keeps personal belongings, where he sits after long hours on the unit floor. That small rectangle of mattress becomes a symbol of personal territory. And when someone enters that territory without permission, the brain reacts as if something important has been threatened. The stress response activates. Heart rate increases. Muscles tighten. The mind prepares for a confrontation. There is another psychological factor involved. Reputation. Inside prison, reputation works like a form of protection. Inmates constantly observe each other. Who backs down? Who stand their ground? Who avoids conflict? These observations shape the social hierarchy inside the unit. If someone allows disrespect, even small disrespect, it can quickly spread through reputation. Other inmates notice. And once a person is labeled weak, they often become a target. So defending territory becomes less about the bed itself and more about protecting identity. Because inside prison, identity is tied directly to survival. Over time, inmates adapt to these unwritten rules. They learn to read the room. They pause before sitting. They ask before touching anything that isn't theirs. They observe before speaking. This constant awareness slowly reshapes the mind. People become more cautious, more alert. Trust becomes rare. Every movement carries meaning. Every decision carries consequences. And every mistake becomes a lesson. Sometimes a quiet one. Sometimes a violent one. Years later, many former inmates still remember their first day inside a cell. Not because of the walls. Not because of the guards. But because of the moment they realized how the invisible rules worked. The moment they understood that prison is not only controlled by official authority, it is also controlled by the social structure built by the inmates themselves. A structure built on territory, reputation, and respect. Inside that structure, even a simple bunk becomes important. Because inside a locked room where almost nothing belongs to you, The smallest space can become the most valuable thing you have, and losing control of that space can mean losing control of everything else.